Welcome to another edition of Jazz Smack Postgame. The Jazz played at home tonight against the Oklahoma City Thunder at the Delta Center, and let's go ahead and talk about it.
Jazz Smack, your source for information and analysis about the Utah Jazz and NBA basketball. Jazz Smack is a community for passionate Utah Jazz NBA fans.
So this was a game that both the Utah Jazz and the Oklahoma City Thunder didn't really necessarily care about winning. Obviously, the Jazz are trying to lose. OKC has already cemented their spot as the number one overall seed in the entire NBA, and I don't think that any of their guys even traveled with the team. It looked like the bench was completely empty. Shea was gone, Chet was gone, Hartenstein was gone, Jalen Williams was gone, Dort was gone. All those guys are gone. And I don't even think they were in Utah. So this was a game of a lot of like young guys on both rosters playing against each other, guys who aren't typically getting huge minutes. And, you know, OKC still has some good players on their bench. Like Isaiah Joe's a good player. And he's obviously a productive player, and he's an important player for OKC, and he did play, and he played well. So it's not like OKC doesn't have some other productive players that are still playing tonight, and the Jazz as well. The Jazz played Keyonte, Jazz played Filipowski, Jazz played Brice. So it's not like the Jazz also don't have some guys that have received minutes throughout the season, but this was one of those games, like the Jazz can't win another game unless Washington wins a game, and even then, the Jazz aren't going to want to win that game just because they would like to have the number one seed. So they're down to one game now. They only have one game left, and it's going to be another loss regardless. And tonight was just, they're just, at this point, the Jazz are simply playing out the season and getting to the lottery. That's all they're doing. And that's obvious from the way they're playing.
Yeah, I agree with that. We wanted to lose this game. I think the only thing I might take away from this is that we were all playing our bench players. We got thumped, right? We got really thumped. And we had some of our guys that we count on or think are going to be part of the future playing, and they did not look good tonight. I mean, they really got thumped. Now, there's a lot of things that David Locke says that, we have a different perspective on, right? We don't see eye to eye on a lot of things regarding the NBA and strategies and tanking and what have you. He did make this multiples, and this is from other NBA sources. He says you can't take the last third of the season and use the statistics from that to mean that much. And I think there's a lot of truth to that because, look, they just want to get done with the season. As you said, the players just want to be done. There's a few guys that are trying to chuck up shots that are trying to do it because they don't have a guaranteed contract next year. I get that. But they just want to get the season done too. They have their vacation plans. They want to take some time off. They want to go to Europe, whatever it is. So they're done. So they've checked out. I get that, but if you do view this as a competitive game, we got thumped.
Yeah, I mean, I'd still like to see the Jazz certainly play better defense. I mean, OKC scored 46 points in the first quarter with all their reserve guys. Like, that's obviously the only thing that can indicate is you're completely non-competitive on the defensive end of the court. Like you're really not even trying. So yeah, that's certainly disappointing. On the other hand, the Jazz can't win. Like they have to lose by so much that they can't even threaten to win the game. I mean, after that last win, they're in a position where they're in a coin toss. They may end up with the second seed going into the lottery now, and that's not where the Jazz wanted to be because of that last win. And so Collins' season is probably already done. He probably doesn't even play in that last game. I mean, there's a really strong chance that Colin never plays in a Jazz uniform again. This might be we may have seen his last minutes in a Jazz uniform, and it is what it is. Like, there's going to be roster turnover. We know that, and there's going to continue to be roster turnover for probably not only this offseason, next offseason, and because the Jazz are in a situation where they're still trying to find players who will fit into, some sort of a meaningful vision of what, Ainge and Zanuck and Hardy have for whatever future the Jazz have, where they can compete for, a title. And so there's still going to be a lot of roster turnover as they try and fit pieces into that vision. But it's still disappointing to see, just completely non-competitive on the defensive end. And it's just disappointing. I so hope that one of those NBA beat writers asks Ainge, like I've previously said, in that end of season meeting, what's the deal with the defense? Like, why are the Jazz so bad on defense year after year after year? And especially when he's talked about it, specifically last offseason, going into last offseason, how the defense has to improve, and now it's just non-existent. So it from that standpoint, I continue to be disappointed.
Yeah, that's actually my disappointment too. It's exactly the same thing as I was going to say, is that 2 years in a row, really 3 years in a row, 2 years in a row were the worst defense in the NBA. And the last part of the season has been brutal. I mean, it's one team after another, 140 points against us. I mean, what tonight, 147? I mean, it's brutal. But then the season before that, where we had some veteran guys still, we were still brutal. Like, we were bottom third of the league. We weren't the worst, but we were bad. And there just doesn't seem to be a mentality on it. And the other thing I was going to say is the Hardy mantra is play hard. Well, defense is a lot of playing hard. Honestly, effort. Okay, so that's not true. And then the other one is pass. We know that that's not being rewarded on this team. And I'm going to ask you this question in a few minutes, and it goes to, at least in my mind, passing. And how I think we're both going to answer this question, but we can get to that. So, I mean, why don't we talk about the the positives in the box score? There's a few, but there's a lot of negatives.
Yeah, it's obviously, I mean, Svi was the high scorer tonight, and he took the most shots. And I mean, Svi basically, he took Colin's minutes tonight, and he took Colin's shots. The shots and minutes that Colin would have normally had, those went to Svi tonight. And I suspect, like I said, I think that'll be the case in the last game as well, in order to ensure another loss. So I think Colin's done, but Svi was the bright spot from shooting the ball. He shot for 10 for 20 from the field, 5 for 14 on threes, and he scored 27 points. But Joe, just looking at the box score, the Jazz shot 63 three-pointers, 63, and shot 17 for 63 from three for 27%. I mean, is that the most three-point attempts the Jazz have ever had in a game? 63? That's a lot. I mean, for a non-overtime game, 63 out of 103 field goal attempts or threes. I mean, my goodness, that's a crazy number. It's absolutely a crazy number, and especially when you only make 17, it's just wild. But that's what the Jazz team has become, and I'm not exactly a fan of it. I'm not a fan of it at all, to tell you the truth. That's what they have become. But like I said, looking at the box score, Svi's the high scorer. Brice and Kyle both shot okay, 7 for 17, both of them. Kyle had a horrific night shooting from 3, 1 for 8. Brice had a better night, 5 for 13 from 3, and he also made 6 or 7 free throws. So Brice also had 25 points, and that's a really good night for Brice as well, because he shot so well from the free throw line. And Brice also had 5 rebounds and 6 assists, which are both good numbers. Like we always say, that Brice is really contributing in other areas of the box score, not just points, which is what we wanted to see out of Brice. So I'd say those are the bright spots. And Oscar as well. Oscar went 5 for 9 from the field and another 14 rebounds for him in 25 minutes, as you would expect Oscar to get, because that's who Oscar is, your rebounding machine. But the bright spots in tonight's game, looking at either side of the court, those bright spots are few and far between, in all honesty.
Yeah, they are. I agree with that. I mean, we're always, as a team, we're trying to look for positives every night to talk about and tell you about. So we're pointing those out. The defense is something that we just can't overlook, like every night. I mean, it's the same story. It just doesn't seem to be an emphasis of the team. And I agree with you. I think that the beat writers, if they're honest, the beat writers are going to challenge Ainge and Hardy and others of like, look, you've got to fix this. Why hasn't it been fixed? Why is it not being emphasized? Because there are some guys that play defense. Oscar tries, play him, because a lot of the other coaches would play somebody like that is hustling and trying to play, and trying to do the right things. And I think you've got to reward guys like that, because then it teaches the other ones. So it's interesting. Kyle's legs are gone. I almost wish he would quit throwing up 3-pointers, because I think his legs are gone for the year. Don't kill your percentage too much. Come back next year when you're stronger and able to handle 82 games and play it again. And then the only other thing I'm going to say is, how did Brice Sensabaugh get, DNPs 5-6 games in a row early in the season? Now I know we're not playing Lowry, we're not paying John Collins, we're not playing. But this guy can play basketball, and he's filling out the rest of the box score. How did he get all these DNPs? Whether you think he's a bad defensive player or not, is he worse than the other players on the team? We know he can score, and he can assist and rebound. 6 assists, 5 rebounds, right? Like, how did he get all those DNPs? There's just guys that are on this team I was baffled about. Like, it took a while for Hardy to figure out that Kyle is a basketball player. It took like a lot of the so-called experts a lot of time to say, hey, that was a steal of the draft. Yeah, you could tell that early in the season. He was a steal of the draft. Maybe not the steal, but you could tell like this guy's got much more potential than a second-round pick. But it took like till the end of the season. We're like, okay, this guy can play. Yeah, he could always play. So those are kind of anomalies. But the question I was going to ask you is, I was thinking, like watching the game tonight and looking at the box score when I was looking at something else. If you're playing up at the field house or the Hyper Building or wherever, what players on this team do you not want on your team?
Well, obviously,
if you were going to pick players like, okay, so
I don't want
Keyonte
and I don't want Svi. I don't want either one of those.
That was my second one.
Yeah,
and the other guy you haven't seen in a while is Clarkson, right?
Yeah. There's no way. I don't want that guy on my team. Yeah.
Svi did not look. The only time Svi passed the ball tonight is when he got into trouble and he had to pass it. Every time he touched the ball, he was looking to chuck it. He was like doing like step backs. I mean, every time that guy touched the ball, he was looking to chuck.
Yeah.
I mean, I was and that's what I was going to tell you. The pass, play hard and pass. Come on. There's like those three guys. There is no pass in their mentality. Yeah, I know Keyonte got 8 assists tonight, but there's very little pass in their mentality. And Svi did not get a lot of minutes, but we know Clarkson and did. But no, Svi, I saw that tonight. I'm like, man, if I were on his team, I'd be hating life. Like, look, I got to get this guy off my team because that's the last guy I want to play for. It's not any fun if you're just watching one guy go one-on-one the whole game.
Yeah. I mean, that makes for. I don't care if you're playing pickup ball, up on campus, or you're playing in a rec league, or you're playing intramurals. I mean, I've played with a number of guys who've played pro basketball, and all sorts of guys that have played college basketball, and I've never played with anybody. I would absolutely refuse to have somebody on my team, whether they've played pro or college or what, that played like any of those 3 guys. I wouldn't want. I don't care what their accolades are. I wouldn't want those guys on any of my teams, because it's just going to I mean, there's no point even going and playing. It just ruins it. And that's kind of where those three guys are. I mean, that's my complaint with watching him play all these minutes here, with Clarkson. It's like year after year and stuff. And I know that Clarkson has a ton of fans in the Philippines, but man, watching that guy play basketball is really difficult. I certainly wouldn't want to be on his team, regardless of the circumstances.
Yeah, and it's against the play hard and pass. So if the mantra, which is a great mantra, fantastic mantra, if the mantra is play hard and pass, three of these guys do not do that. And if you think about the history of the Jazz, two guys that I would love to play with, Stockton and Darren Williams, they look for you. AK-47, they look for you. I mean, these are guys that look for you. I think even Jordan, some of Jordan's most famous times are when he passes the ball off to Kerr or Paxson, right? Yeah. I mean, this is the best score I've ever seen. Yeah, I know LeBron has the most points, but Jordan would wax him if they were playing, and because no one could guard Jordan. You could not guard that guy. But he would pass the ball, right? I mean, he would be on you. Wouldn't be fun playing with him, but he wouldn't be like where you would hate it, like with Svi and Clarkson and Keyonte. It just wouldn't be any fun. So I hope this offseason Hardy reflects, if he's still our coach, and he says, look, I believe in these principles, and I got to make sure my team that I coach also follows those principles, because Svi, I saw him and I'm like, wow, this is incredible. I don't know why his teammates don't deck the guy, right? Because he would not even pass the ball to them, and he was taking wild Clarkson-esque shots. I mean, it was amazing.
Yeah, it just makes it a really difficult game to watch. I memean, it makes it a difficult game to play in if you're a teammate of that. And from a spectator's perspective, it makes it a really difficult game to watch. I want to see ball movement and better shots taken, rather than just watching a bunch of one-on-one, just forcing up really poor shots. It's discouraging. It really is. But anyway.
Want to look at the Tankathon?
Yeah, let's glance at that quickly. So there's one game left. Washington and Utah both tied at 17-64, and then Charlotte is 2 games ahead at 19-62. So the final standings will be either Washington or Utah 1 or 2, and then Charlotte 3, New Orleans will be 4, Philadelphia will be 5, and Brooklyn will be 6. And then Toronto will be 7. San Antonio will be 8th. And then we don't know. But that'll be the order for the 8 teams. The only one we don't know right now, Utah and Washington. It's going to come down to a coin flip.
Yeah.
So other than that, that's where we stand.
Interesting thing, the last game of the season, we're on the road against Minnesota. So we actually could play Colin Sexton, because they're going to be, I think they're going to be trying to win. If you look at the standings tonight, at least how they've sorted them, and because they got the same record, it's a little deceptive. But Minnesota has now moved in out of the play-in, which is really bad for the Jazz. Look, I think they're going to make the playoffs even they're in the play-in, but they have a chance of getting knocked out, right? And it's they're in the play-in. I'm sorry. Okay. They're 7th in this.
Well, they're 48-33, and Golden State's 48-33, according to this.
And Memphis is probably, because of their coaching change and their mess of a team, they're probably in the play-in. So but I wouldn't want to play Memphis, because you got John Morant. It's a really dangerous team. But it'll be interesting. I mean, Golden State, Minnesota, I just love for Minnesota to stay there. So in a way, we should try to beat Minnesota. But if we beat Minnesota, then we're definitely going to fall behind Washington, which we don't want to do either. So I think we'll probably tank it. and just, because we can't, because even if Minnesota's in the play-in, if you look at those teams in the play-in right now, 2 of those are going to make it to the next round, are going to make the playoffs. Would you bet against Minnesota not being one of those 2?
No,
No.
yeah, you can't. I mean, they're going to, based on who they're playing here, no, Minnesota will end up, they'll end up in the regular playoffs. They're not going to get eliminated.
Sacramento could get hot, right? It's possible. Like Sacramento could get hot one game. It's one game. That's the danger here. So it's possible. But the probability of Sacramento beating Minnesota, Memphis would have to beat Minnesota. And then Memphis would be in. And then the winner, I think it's the winner of, or the loser of Minnesota and Memphis then plays Sacramento, Dallas. I think that's how it works, or whoever wins that. And so you would have to have Minnesota lose twice. And honestly, it could happen, but it's unlikely. It would have to be whoever the winner of Sacramento and Dallas, if, Minnesota really, it's possible, right? I would rather be that than have them at 6 seed where we know that there's no chance, they're not going to be in the lottery. So we'll see. But I agree with you. I view it as a 10% probability, even if they're in the play-in, that they got knocked out, because let's face it, they're good. That's a good team. I'm dumbfounded they're even considering being in the playoff, because that's a good basketball team.
Yeah. Minnesota's in a much better position than those 3 teams below them in the standings right now: Memphis, Sac, and Dallas. Memphis is a mess because of the coach problem, but so Minnesota's certainly in a better position than those other 3 teams.
Yeah, but Dallas I give no shot to, but with Levine, with DeRozan, with Sabonis, it's possible, right? One game, it's possible. So, but we're both betting against anybody beating Minnesota out of that, but it's possible. And so let's hope they're in the play-in, and let's hope we get really lucky. Although if we get really lucky, what do I really want to get really lucky on? Getting the number 1 pick. That's really what we can't get lucky twice. So if we have the choice, I'd rather get lucky on Minnesota making it and we get the number 1 pick.
Yeah.
Anyhow, that's all I got.
Okay. Well, I think we're going to call it. We're going to call it a night. And like I said, there's one more game left in the season, and so we will be back after the next and last Jazz game, and then after that, it's the lottery. So we will talk everybody later. Please, for those watching on YouTube, please like, share, and subscribe. And for those following us on X, you can follow us at Jazz Smack. And we will talk to everybody later.